All right, we are live, and you are listening to Mage the Podcast. Hi, I'm Joseph Leo, and of course, this show is talking about all things Mage the Podcast. On today's show, we are going to chat with Josh Heath, the Chief Operations Officer at High Level Games and host of Werewolf the Podcast, also the gentleman who gave the name for this podcast. And we're going to be talking about the Storytellers Vault. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm out in the middle of the wilderness this weekend, so it's an interesting thing doing a podcast out in the middle of nowhere.
No, are you a big camper?
I hate camping. However,
Oh.
my wife and a lot of our friends really enjoy it. So twice a year I get dragged out, and it's fun. I enjoy it, but I would not choose to go camping these days. Getting old and all of that doesn't make it as fun as it used to be.
I hear that. My girlfriend loves to camp. We camp at least twice a year. I've not camped since Boy Scouts. However, I've discovered those little air mattresses. Those things are amazing. My big thing, though, is I like to take showers. In some places, like if you go to Yosemite, no showers are allowed. And as my girlfriend says, sometimes you just have to put up with a scratchy butthole.
That's that is one way of looking at it. Thankfully, the place we're at has some showers, so that's nice. You know, you can get at least a little bit clean and then sweat all day long after doing so.
No, I have to admit, I'm a environmentally conscious sort of guy. But when I take those showers, they recommend it just for a couple of minutes. But I go in there with a stack of quarters of tokens, and I'm like, no, I am going to come out of here clean. Even if I'm going to get dusty 5 minutes later, I'm going to be immaculate.
Yep, 100%.
All right, so before we dig in and talk about the Storytellers Vault, which I'm very excited about, because just to give a little brief synopsis, if you've ever wanted to publish your own chronicle in the world of darkness or cover a particular category of vampire, werewolf, or mage, or whatnot, the Storytellers Vault is where you can do it, and you can make a little coin. And those are the broad strokes, and Josh will give us the details in just a minute. First of all, I wanted to congratulate you on your new job. We don't have to go into the details, but kudos to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I am really excited about this because I basically get to write the dialogue for simulations. So in a way, I'm taking my love of RPGs and taking things that I've learned making them and doing them in a day job now. So that's pretty exciting.
Well, speaking of dialogue, I listened to your Rage Across the Story episode on Werewolf the Podcast, and I was really impressed. Whether or not that was you or your cousin from Australia, that was fantastic dialogue.
Thanks. Yeah, that was me. I grew up in a family with several members from Australia. And so back in the day, I used to be able to do a really good Australian accent. But I slipped here and there in that episode. But I still thought it was fun to try it and try out something new.
I don't think I could pull it off for an episode, so I'm going to say this again. Kudos to you. All right. Well, one last thing I wanted to do before we get into this, just because it was so weird. I had this dream this morning, and I was in a Marvel Universe theme park where the details were so specific and so weird that I was amazed it was coming out of my head. And it was creepy, though. Kind of like Marvel Universe meets Alice in Wonderland distilled through Creepy Magazine. And to quote Liz Lemon, I want to go to there. I have tons of stuff to write for my journal, but man, it was a fantastic dream. I did not want to wake up.
That sounds awesome. That sounds like something you definitely have to pull out and write some sort of story about at some point.
I think I do. If not a story, something to incorporate it into the campaign. All right, let's get to the vault. I gave just a brief description, but let's go into the details. What is the Storyteller's Vault?
Sure. So the Storytellers Vault is a community content creation site put out by White Wolf, run through the One Bookstore or Drive-Through RPG face. So all of the back-end technology is run by the folks at One Bookstore. And what happens is you, the content creator, gets 50% of the cost of the product that you make, and White Wolf gets the other 50% for giving you access to their intellectual property to play in. They give you different art packs. There are thousands at this point, thousands of different art pieces from the various game lines that you can use in any of the products that you create. And all you've got to do is set a price point after you've made your book, and White Wolf gets 50%, you get 50%, and it's a great way to say, hey, particularly for folks that are new to RPG writing, hey, I can do this, and get some attention from folks like White Wolf and Onyx Path Publishing, and really any of the other companies that are out there in the RPG space.
I think this is a fun and exciting idea. And I must admit, I've been away from role playing games for several decades, so White Wolf is not alone in doing this. I think Dungeons and Dragons does something similar. Is that correct?
That's right. I think that they were the first company to do a community content creation system, and they call that the DM's Guild. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the same sort of idea. You create your own RPG product. They have a few interesting restrictions on the way the DM's Guild works, but for a long time it was Forgotten Realms only. So you could write something in Forgotten Realms, and then they opened it up, and you could write things in Ravenloft, and you can write things in Eberron now. There are a few other settings that are open. But yeah, it's a way for you to write your own D&D adventure and publish it, or other sorts of products that you could use in D&D.
Okay. Well, I think it's a genius idea, and I wish everybody would do it, especially like in the travel universe. But let's go back to the Storyteller's Vault. Let's establish some parameters. It's open ended at this point, but what exactly are some of the guidelines that a storyteller would need to know?
Sure. Oh, that's a good way of framing this. I think the guidelines you need to keep in mind are pretty multifaceted. But the first thing is to decide which edition, and from there you can you're given templates. White Wolf has created some really well-designed templates for you to make a specific product or supplement for the edition you want to write. So you choose an edition. Most people would say probably 20th anniversary edition for Mage. You write a supplement for that, and you can only write for things that are within the scope of what White Wolf has open at the moment. So they have Vampire, Werewolf, Mage, and they're going to be having Exalted open pretty soon. And Exalted technically is a separate world from the World of Darkness, so you can't cross those over, but you can now include anything in either Mage, Vampire, or Werewolf and cross all of those over. But at the moment, you can't write anything for, say, Changeling the Dreaming, or Demon the Fallen, or Hunter the Reckoning. You can't bring those elements in quite yet, but in the future, hopefully, all of that's going to be open, and then you can make a supplement that covers kind of all of that sort of space.
No, I just thought of this question on the fly. I have a list of questions, but this one
Mm-hmm.
just hit me. In White Wolf, some of the material can get really dark, graphic, and extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is that something that is permissible within the Storyteller's Vault?
It is. And if you're going really dark, they do have templates for Black Dog Game supplements. So I've got, I think it's now 36 different publications on the Storyteller's Vault, and only one of mine we decided would be Black Dog, and that was a character folio supplement for Beckett's Jihad Diary, which touches on Montreal by Night, which was a Black Dog book. So if you are interested in writing something that's really dark, that may be particularly adult or goes way across the line, you could do it as a Black Dog supplement, and that would be totally fine. People would know, okay, I know what I'm getting into by picking up this book, and it wouldn't be a surprise. Um, White Wolf does have a little bit of oversight too, so if they look at a product and they say, "Woo, this is a little bit farther than we're normally comfortable with," they could, in theory, say, "Hey, you should put a Black Dog Games label on this," or they might even say, "Maybe you should take this down. This is a little bit too far for us." I haven't seen or heard of that happening yet, but it is potentially within the scope that they are allowed to do.
Now, if you're listening to the show and you're new to the world of darkness and you're like, what is this Black Dog stuff is? Well, you can probably infer what it is, but it's the highly adult content. I believe back a day, actually, they had to keep the supplements sealed in a black plastic bag, if I recall correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, I remember that. Some stores did that, and some stores were less concerned about it. Um, but yeah, they're definitely, it's designed to cover the more adult material. And by adult, I don't necessarily mean just sex and violence, because that's a part of the World of Darkness. But like egregious things. And I guess we can just leave it there because I don't want to be too descriptive.
No, that's fine. In fact, I'm in a Vampire Chronicle, and every other week our kids are with us, and during those weeks the games become more PG-13. But when they're away, we
Hmm.
definitely go a little darker. All right, so there's a lot of artwork provided. You said thousands, and I was curious: will there ever be an option for creators to submit their own artwork, or is that just a patch of legality that nobody wants to get into?
No, that's totally okay. There are actually a whole bunch of artists on the vault right now that have created different art packs that you can go and you can purchase and you can use in your supplements. There are some amazing artists that are on there. So far, there isn't any mage specific. As far as I know, there isn't anything mage specific for an art pack from a creator. But if you're an artist, a visual artist of any sort, a painter, anything like that, and you'd like to create something, that's totally cool, and I will buy it, and I know most people do. Um, I don't think there's a single piece of art that's been put on the vault that I haven't bought because I'm like, you know what? I will use this at some point. I need it.
Now, on your High Level Games website, you provided a very useful article, and I read that actually you folks would do editing as well. Could you explain a little bit about that and what your rates are?
Yeah. So it kind of depends on what you're looking to do. We do proofreading for about $1 a page, and we do copy editing and developmental editing for a little bit more. Usually no more than $3 a page if we're doing a full developmental edit and everything. I actually just got finished editing the Great Lakes lineages, Dark Shores Lineages of the Great Lakes, which is a series of 5 different bloodlines set in and around the Chicago area. Um, so if that's something that you need some help with, editing is really important to having people, one, buy your product, and two, it just helps you look a little bit more professional. If people are interested in getting some support from that, for that, you can reach out to High Level Games at info@hlgcon.com or go to our website and shoot us a message on our contact form.
Well, $3, that's practically nothing. In fact, I think you're losing money doing this.
That's pretty standard for rates. It's a little bit on the like inexpensive side, but our goal is to make this accessible for people. So it's probably not a huge like I'm not making tons of money doing it, but in High Level Games, we have a couple of people that are editors on staff that are willing to do this. But our goal is to make all of the products that are being put out better. So even if you're not writing for Storytellers Vault, and that's something that you want some editing for, reach out to us because it's something we enjoy doing. It helps the community as a whole.
That's so great. And I didn't set this interview up to do a plug for High Level Games, but I mean, $3, come on, that's ridiculous.
Sure.
Um, so one of the other things I saw in this article is the Chronicle Jumpstart. Again, when I do these shows, I started as a newbie to World of Darkness just a year ago, and I've been spending the last year getting up to speed. So for other people like myself who are getting up to speed, explain to them what a Chronicle Jumpstart is.
Sure. So those are our first products that we put out, and I had this idea that when I'm writing a game, I usually just need an instigating action to start crafting the entire chronicle and let the players kind of delve into the different plot lines that are out there in the city or the location that you're using. So for me, I said, okay, let me take some of my instigating action ideas and put those out as a 1-page Chronicle Jumpstart. It's a single page of plot, and then sometimes up to 15 or 16 pages of NPC information so that you can run the story effectively. And then that way you've started a game. If you're a new storyteller, you've never run before, it's a great way of like, boom, this is what's going on, and then you can just kind of roll with the punches after that, and you've got all the tools to be able to do so. And we've got, I want to say we have 9 of those up now. We have 8 for vampire and 1 for werewolf, and I'm working on 1 for mage, but mage is harder. So it's harder to get the 1 page to have just enough information, really.
So why is it hard for Mage?
The concepts in mage, because they're so big, it's hard to say here's, just one page of story for you to start with. I almost feel like I want to just give people like, and here's like some philosophy reading to pull this in. Here's some religion, some theology reading to pull in. And I think all of that's extraneous. So I'm trying really hard to be like, okay, here's a core one page of plot, and it will work for Mage. I just haven't quite gotten it down yet.
Yeah, well, that sounds like Mage all over. So another thing that the Storytellers Vault offers, which I'm really excited about, is novels. I
Mhm.
expect they're mostly short stories and novellas. Uh, have you actually had a chance to look at some of these novels or short stories that have been submitted?
Yeah, so there are a couple of them that I've read. I haven't finished any of them, and this is a problem for me for books at the moment anyway. And my job shift went from I was pretty much doing 9 different things at once to doing one. So I'm starting to read again, and it's really nice. But I think a lot of the novels that are on there are good. And they're not quite professional level, but I think what they are is a good starting place for someone that's past being just a fan fiction writer and they want to be a little bit more professional. It's a good stepping stone to that. It's a good way to get feedback. It's a good way to play in an IP as if you were writing fan fiction, but then getting paid for it, which is just a win-win if you ask me.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And before we get made specific about the Storytellers Vault, I wanted to ask you a professional question. When you write, what what software are you using? Is it Scrivener? Is it Word? What are you using?
I use a mix of Word and Google Docs. Almost all of my writing is in Google Docs these days, and that's mostly because I'm the type of person that can write on my phone sometimes, not all the time. I even occasionally do editing on my phone. Um, but for me, it's a way of reminding myself, like, okay, do 100 words right now, and Google Docs I can take anywhere. So it's a lot better than just relying on Word or um, a Scrivener or any of the other programs that are out there.
So the app I use, because it's on my desktop and my phone and iPad, it's called Ulysses. So it's Mac specific, obviously. But I
Mhm.
really like it because you just get the text out, and then later you can export it to Word or a PDF or whatever format that you want. I used Dropbox Paper for a while when I was in a team, um, but that didn't really take off. All right, sorry for getting the weeds about the tools that we use.
Sure.
So, so the vault has been around for a couple of months, and what have you seen that you thought was noteworthy off the top of your head that's related to Mage?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So, Mage is the most recently opened of the World of Darkness lines, but I think we just passed the year mark for the Storytellers Vault being open, which is exciting. But so far the coolest books to me, and the first one is it's the most popular Storytellers Vault book. Yeah, it's called the Enlightened Grimoire, and the writer for this actually went through every single Mage book and wrote down every wrote and updated them to Mage 20th Anniversary Edition.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
it's humongous. It's 211 pages, and it's something like 1,500 or 15,000. I think it's 1,500. 15,000 sounds outrageous, but it's like 1,500 rotes. So every rote that's ever been in a book is there, and it's 14.99. That saves you like hundreds of books that you would have to buy, and then doing the updates and everything. It's a quality piece of work.
That is like a Brucato effort type of writing.
Right. And actually, Sater said, "Thank you for doing that. Now I don't have to do it." And I was like, "Well, that's amazing. That's the opportunity that the Storyteller's Vault gives you, is that you might be doing something that the developer wants to do and just doesn't have the time or resources to make it happen."
All right, well, I'm going to purchase this immediately. Oh, by the way, are these things available for print on demand as well?
It's a great question, and it's a question that the folks at the Storytellers Vault get asked probably twice a day at this stage. At the moment, no. And if you don't mind, like a really in the weeds sort of segue,
Yeah, let's
I
do
can
it.
talk about why. Okay, so there are these different templates that White Wolf has created, and they offer both a Word template and an InDesign template. And for those that don't know, InDesign is an Adobe suite of part of the Adobe suite of products, and it's what most publishers use in some form or another these days to create their books. Well, the biggest problem with bringing these books into a print-on-demand format is that to actually be printed, they have to be done correctly in InDesign. And as someone who has taught themselves InDesign over the last year, it's not easy to get a book so it's actually printable in InDesign. You can make a book that looks wonderful on PDF, really, I would say fairly easily, but to make it print worthy takes a little bit more work. And so right now they're trying to figure out a way to offer print on demand with the templates that they have available without ending up like having a creator make something that's impossible to print or making something that comes out terrible, because both the customer and the product creator are going to hate that if that happens. So that's the weird like mechanical thing that they're working on. They are working on it. It will be an option at some point in the future.
Could you give us just one example why it becomes so difficult? I am actually a graphic
Yep.
designer, so I know that if you have a lot of pages, that the pages start to shift, so you have to
Mm-hmm.
account for that shift for publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something like that, or is another example you could give us?
That is a perfect example. My book, Dark New England, which is a Vampire the Masquerade supplement that is looking at New England from that scope. It's about 270 pages, and I was like, I've got this correct. All my page sizes are right, and I should be able to go and print this. And I decided to go out, and I was like, I'm just going to buy a printed copy for me. I'm going to make it through Lulu or one of these other companies that does like a 1 or 2 print on demand book. And I was like, this shouldn't be a problem. I've done this right. And come to find out, page shift was one of the major problems. Like there are a couple of my
Yep.
pages that for whatever reason are smaller than the rest of the pages. And I can't quite figure out how to get them to be the right size. I sort of have an idea how to do it now, but it's like stalled me in that process, because I'm like, well, now I have to go back and reformat all of this stuff that I thought was right, and it just isn't, because that's what happens as you're doing this whole process.
Well, these days I do more web design than print design, but I can definitely
Hmm.
put you in touch with a person who would give you plenty of advice. All right, so the Grimoire, that is a fantastic product. Is there anything else that you could recommend?
Yeah, so there are 2 other books that I want to mention. The first one is Razors and Thunderbolts. This is actually a Sorcerer's Crusade book by Travis Legge. And Travis and I have talked a little bit about Storytellers Vault stuff on his podcast. This is a book for the Order of Reason about and I can never pronounce this right, but the Ksirafai. They're the like secret police within the Order of Reason that become these weird sort of like background characters throughout Mage, through all of the modern stuff as well. And they're really creepy and really interesting. And if you're interested in learning more about them, the book Razors and Thunderbolts is a great option to kind of dig into that. So that's one that I would suggest. And then the other one, there's a couple of really good ones. Oh, there's a book by, just really quickly, there's a book by Adrian from the Midnight Express podcast on there as well, called Watch the World Burn. I haven't read that yet, but anything that Adrian writes is something to check out. The other one, the one that I'm really excited about, though, is Island of the Dead God, which is by Jacob Klunder. And this is a Dark Ages Mage book using the Mage 20th Anniversary Edition rules, and it's actually looking at the temple fortress at Arcona in 1168, and it tells an entire story about that area, which is in the Baltic region between Denmark and all of that. So it's a really interesting setting book and a really interesting adventure. So if folks are interested in Dark Ages Mage, that would be a great book to dig into.
That's really exciting because I know a lot of people like getting into that time period, and
Hmm.
so if there's more material for people to dig into, that is fantastic. Quick question, we got Mage specific, but I want to touch upon this again very briefly. My friend, he is running a vampire chronicle, and he also wants to submit it to his by night adventure to the Storytellers Vault.
Hmm.
Aside from all the things we've covered, is a additional tip that you would give?
Um, hmm. Well, I know we mentioned this, but it's something that I have to reiterate. Make sure you edit it. Make sure you don't edit it yourself. Make sure you get another set of eyes to edit it. There's just like a standard sort of thing you should consider doing with putting anything up on the vault. The second layer of things that you should think about is what is the amount of content you are providing, and how are you going to balance that about what you're going to charge for it? And this is hard because my general rule of thumb is that for every 10 pages, you should charge $1. However, when you get up to around the 15 and higher range, people are less likely to buy a book. And that's fair because it's in PDF. So if you're going to put together a 300-page book, maybe consider like chunking that up and selling it that way. Like you could sell it as a player's guide and then a storyteller's guide. There are ways to do that that will ultimately have you earn more money than putting all of the material together in one big book, which seems counterintuitive, but people are less inclined to pay $20 for a PDF, which I understand.
That is really useful information, which is why I wanted to have you on the show.
Mhm.
Now, I've been listening to a number of podcasts, and you and the Onyx Path team have done a fantastic job on the Onyx Path podcast themselves and appearing on other shows, getting the word out. Is there one in particular that you recall that you think people should go back and listen to, where they talk about redlining or editor's notes or whatnot?
Oh, the Onyx Pathcast is amazing. The one for freelancers, they did 2 episodes on freelancing for Onyx Path. I recommend that every single person interested in writing for RPGs goes and listens to that because it's excellent advice. Um, and to be fair, I'm only a freelancer for Onyx Path, and I've only done a couple of books for them. But they honestly, both or all three, Eddie, Dixie, and Matthew offer some really good advice for folks. So I would recommend going and listening to the freelancing episodes from them.
Yeah, I have a hard time keeping that in my head because I always think of Onyx Path as a freelance writing team for White Wolf anyway.
Mm.
I know it's its own entity, but it's kind of, to me, loosely defined.
Yeah, it's complicated because of how the IP has been handled over the years. White Wolf was an entity that was its own company and its own publishing wing, and then when CCP bought it, it became really difficult to figure out how to parse everything. And then Onyx Path became its own company, run by Rich Thomas, and White Wolf now exists again as a company. It's to say the least, it's complicated. There's some good explanations that Rich has put on the Onyx Path website if people wanted to read them, but just if you're just interested in playing the games and buying the books, you don't need to worry about all of the sort of background intricacies.
Yeah, I'm almost sorry that I brought it up, and maybe on a future podcast I'll get into the nitty gritty of it. All right, Josh, you provided some wonderful material. I'm really excited about this, and it seems like White Wolf and Onyx Path really want to bring these games to the forefront. I know that during the '90s, White Wolf was over the place, and they rolled the roost, and I think this is a good stab at establishing prominence once again in the gaming community. If we would like to learn more about you or listen to your podcast, where's the best place to find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me at Werewolf the Podcast, which is one of the podcasts that I run, and I'm talking about Werewolf the Apocalypse on that. You can also find me at High Level Games. We're on Twitter at HLG_corporate, or you can find us at www.hlgcon.com. That's our convention that we're running in Atlantic City in October. So if conventions are your thing and you want to play some World of Darkness games, we're going to be running some stuff there. You can also find us at highlevelgames.ca. It's
All
probably
right.
the easiest ways.
I'll be at the con in spirit. Before we go, last week, my co-host Adam Semberg, Adam Simpson, he did a part 2 to Adventure Writing for Mage, and it is currently our second most downloaded episode on Mage the Podcast. So if you are interested in writing your own adventures, that is a good place to start. I think you'll really like it. Please subscribe to Mage the Podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and TuneIn. And if you have the time, if you're so inclined, give a rating, write a review. I'm actually writing reviews for podcasts once a week now, and I do it out of the goodness of my own heart, and also because if you're into gaming and you love Werewolf, you love Vampire or Changeling, and you want more people to know about these podcasts, particularly in iTunes, it gooses the algorithm and it pushes it to the forefront and helps people discover these things. And of course, I love Mage. I'd like to have more people learn about Mage and be in Mage. You can also follow us on Twitter at Mage the Podcast. So, for Josh Heath and Mage the Podcast, I'm Joseph Aleo. I'll see you next week.